Probably about 2 minutes. Uh-uh. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Okay. And Kenneth, can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes, I can.
All right. Fantastic. Welcome everyone. Good evening. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today in today's session. Before we do go ahead and kick it off, I kind of want to take this moment and briefly talk about CSMP. So most of you may be aware, CSMP is a nonprofit organization. A lot of the public program that you may have seen from us are things like webinar. We've done hackathons. We've had security panels. Really activities that will bring people together. Pre-pandemic, this worked out really well. We had free food, drinks, people come together. You socialize, you network, you get to know people, and you get to learn at the end of the day or at the end of the night, you get to learn something about cybersecurity. So that's what we have been doing. Behind the scene, we do have other programs, right? We have blogs, we have career resources, we have cyber safety, our boot camp. If you haven't seen this yet, and this is something you're interested in, I encourage you to apply. Simply go to our website, csmp.org, and there should be navigation there to get to it. But the URL is, and I'll drop it in the chat, the URL is csmp.org/US-bootcamp. I'll drop the link in the chat later. So the bootcamp is something, we've been meaning to kick off quite some time now, but it is challenging when we talk about free bootcamp, right? The average cybersecurity bootcamp it's around $20,000, which is very pricey and out of the range of a lot of people. So, part of our mission is to make these type of resources accessible, right? So that people can learn about cybersecurity, people can have these skills and they can join the workforce. There is well over 1 million open positions today, but it's just not enough people, right? So we're trying to do our part, train people and join the workforce. Right. And we do all of this for free. So, because of that, we do, ask our audience like yourself, right? If you can potentially donate to us, that will be greatly grateful, right? Everything that we do is for you. And once again, we do remove that financial barrier, right? So that you can have access to these type of resources. So when you can, csp.org/donate. We have 14 chapters. We have 12 chapters in the US. We have one in Canada, Toronto, and we have one in India. So we have expanded fairly rapid. Um, so, there might be people on this call who are from different regions, of the world. But like we mentioned, right, we started this out as doing in-person events. And as the pandemic came, we transitioned more into webinars. But doing in-person events, people love it. They want it back. And it is something that we have slowly kicked off. We've had a networking event in Chicago. We had an event security, I believe about like database security in San Francisco, and we have others coming up. So if you're in our other chapters, keep a lookout for those news. So with that said, I'm going to transition over to Kenneth. So Kenneth Ellington is a senior cybersecurity consultant at EY. He specializes in SIEM and SOAR technologies, like such as Splunk, Resilient, Logarithm. So he also founded the Ellington Cyber Academy, which is an e-learning platform that train people on how to use various SIM technologies. The idea really here is to upskill yourself and, to have a better career. With that said, I want to pass it off to Kenneth. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you. I appreciate you were talking about me like that. So let's get started. Can you see my screen?
Sure can.
Perfect. All right. So I want to say thank you for everyone that showed up today. I know probably a long day for everyone here, so I want to make it as interesting as possible so you get the most out of it. So welcome to the Splunk Lab workshop. So again, my name is Kenneth Ellington, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself in the next slide. There we go. So who am I? Who is this guy that's talking to you? So I went to the University of South Florida. I graduated during 2020 during COVID, so I didn't really actually graduate, which sucked. So I'm also a professor at the University of Houston. I work there part-time. I'm also a senior consultant at one of the big four accounting firms. An interesting fact about me is I'm a huge My Hero Academia fan. I absolutely love the anime. I love most animes, I'm not gonna lie. That's what I do in my spare time. So it's a couple interesting facts about me. And I want to give you an overview of what we'll be going over today. So we'll be going over introduction to Splunk and SIEM fundamentals, demo of Splunk Web and assertion basics, then introduction to SOAR, XSOAR, and SOAR fundamentals. So there will be a demo during the middle of this thing, and there will also be questions sprinkled throughout. So I'll be posting those, and then you can just post your answers in the chat, and we'll get them answered that way. So why should you care what I'm telling you right now? Why is this important? So these topics are areas that hiring managers are directly asking for and are looking for, especially on my team. SIEM and SOAR affects every portion of cybersecurity because you're logging, detecting, and managing all the data, so it affects everything. That's a growing field within the cybersecurity niche. And for me, it's insanely fun, and I don't really ever have a boring day on my job. So this is what I'm really passionate about. That's why I teach it. So what is a SIEM? Okay. So what is a SIEM? So a SIEM is a security information event monitoring system. In English, what that means is it monitors and collects logs in an environment and allows you to detect on them. So think of Splunk Enterprise Security, QRadar, Logarithm, Microsoft Sentinel, Elastic. Those are some SIEM platforms that are popular to use. So one thing I've noticed, people get confused with Splunk and Splunk ES. So Splunk is not a SIEM. Splunk is a log management platform that has a SIEM component, which is called Splunk Enterprise Security. That's the thing that people get confused a lot. So I'll keep that in mind. People use it interchangeably because it's Splunk, but Splunk in itself is a log management platform and has a SIEM component called Splunk Enterprise Security. So the cool thing about it is you can collect a lot of data and you can monitor, create visualizations on it. So create visualizations like dashboards, alerts, which I'll be showing you later in the lab. But those are some things you can do with a SIEM platform. As I just said, some of the basics are log retention, log management. So a lot of times this is important if you have specific compliance needs you need to do. You need to retain your logs, retain this amount of data for a certain time period. A SIEM is a great way to handle that. And data aggregation, data correlation. So basically taking large amounts of data, finding similarities on it, and correlating that data for detection and monitoring. And then again, going back to compliance, there's certain ways you can structure your data. So you can normally have hot, cold, and warm, and that's a way that you can grab your data quickly. So what is Splunk? So as I was saying earlier, Splunk is a log management and data aggregation platform. It's one of the market leaders in that. Again, Splunk is not a SIEM in of itself. It has a SIEM component called Splunk Enterprise Security. Because with the normal Splunk Enterprise instance, you can log almost any type of data. So that can be finance data, that can be business data, that can be IT operations, observability. Well, I can't say that. So it doesn't have to be security per se. With that being said, security data and security use cases are, I believe, like around 60% of Splunk's use cases in the business that they do. So they do a lot of security work, but they are not in of itself a security platform, right? So they're a log management and data aggregation platform. So that's something I want you to know about Splunk. So Splunk uses Google's search optimization engine. So their learning curve is not too insanely difficult. The language they use is called SPL, or Splunk, a processing language. Elastic uses the same thing. And so does Humio in the back end. So what that means is if you're trying to transition from, let's say, Splunk towards Elastic towards Humio, and remember, these are different SIEM platforms, right? If you're trying to do that, a learning curve, it's normally pretty quick, not too difficult between all three of them because of the backend portions that they use for their search optimization engine. So that's a little bit about Splunk. Did anyone have any questions about that at all? Are there any questions in the chat? No? Okay, then let's get started. Right, next slide then. So Splunk is composed of 3 basic components. And I can send out the link if anyone's interested in reading more about it. So the 3 basic components are a search head, an indexer, and a forwarder. So a search head is a component where you, the user, will interact with the most. So if you're an analyst or you're a knowledge manager, you're going to be working on the search head. So the search head is what does all of the searching. That's why all your queries are written. That's why all your queries are processed. Then you have the indexer. The indexer is basically the data repository. So all your data that gets sent, it gets indexed, gets sent towards the indexer. And then you have the forwarder. So the forwarder is basically it can be a lightweight instance or lightweight agent of Splunk that you install on normal devices that you own. So think of syslog servers, certain networking devices, certain devices that you own. You install a forwarder on it, and then you would tell the forwarder, hey, forward this data towards my Splunk index server, right? It would then forward that data. The data gets indexed by the indexer, and then the search head, once you, the user, are trying to find, I don't know, data about whenever users logging on, you would write your search query, and then that search query is going to be queried by the search head for the indexer. So the search head can take that search query to the indexer and say, hey, keep finding data for me. Indexer can say, sure thing, I can do that. So it's going to search all the files inside of the repository. It's going to bring the data back, send it back to the search head, and then it's going to display it for you. And we'll be going over the search head component. You got to get to see what it looks like, more detail in about a couple minutes. Question? So there are some questions in the chat. So which are the leading or well-known SIEM tools in the industry? So those would be Splunk Enterprise Security, Elastic, Microsoft Sentinel, and Humio are to name a few. Then how Splunk different to New Relic? I've never actually heard of New Relic. I can do more research on that and give you a better answer after the call, if that's what you would like. Okay. Slide. So this is a good illustration of what a Splunk distributed environment looks like. So again, you have your devices, right? The heck, oh. Can I annotate on this? Okay. Right,
Yeah,
so,
I can see it.
awesome. So you have your devices that send data towards the indexer, right? These are on-prem services, cloud data, public cloud data. So the indexer, once it receives the data, it's going to index that data, store it in a repository, right? And then you, the user, let's say you have a Windows machine, All right, it's your laptop. I'm a terrible drawer. Don't laugh at me. Terrible. Windows. All right, let's just go with that. So you have a Windows machine, right? And you're accessing the Splunk server through the Splunk GUI, right? Through Splunk Web. You're gonna write your query saying, hey, I want user information, right? User information. The search head is then gonna query the indexer, right? And ask the indexer, hey, can you find all information about users for the last 24 hours? And the indexer is gonna say, sure, I can do that. So the indexer is then gonna search all its files in the repository. Then once it finds it, it's like, hey, I found it. It's gonna send it back towards you, all right? And then it's gonna display it on your machine, and you'll get that data back, and you can create visualizations, reports, alerts, whatever you want off of the data that got brought back towards you. Normally, this is so in a normal distributed environment, you will have like hundreds of folders, dozens of search heads and indexers. In the lab environment that I'm going to show you, we're going to be using the standalone all-in-one. So we're going to have one search head and one indexer. So everything's on one server. That's why I call it a standalone all-in-one. But all deployments to the core work basically the same. It's just when you scale up, it looks a little bit different. Okay, clear this, erase. All right, there we go. All right, that's the next slide. So polling questions. So you can put these, your answers or questions in the chat and we'll answer them for you. So what are the main purposes of a SIEM? Is the first one. The second one will be, we'll name the 3 main components in Splunk. I'll give everyone about 2 minutes to answer that. Okay, so in the chat it's disabled. I don't know if we can get that fixed or not.
Let me see what I can do. So about that. Okay, sorry about that. I enabled it.
Awesome. So for question 1, we're getting SIEM helps to manage and secure information in the event. Number 1, SIEM is used to convert raw data into user readable data. Those are all correct. So what about question 2? Name the 3 main components in Splunk. Does anyone have the answer towards that? I'll give it another minute before we move on. Not answered. Yep. So I'm getting forwarder, indexer, search head. Yes. So make sure you're taking like the Splunk exam. Make sure you put search head instead of header. Yeah. So the three main components are forwarder, the indexer, and the search head. That is correct. Good job, everyone. Let's move on. All right, so I'm going to show you a demo of a Splunk environment. So let's see. So this is the Splunk web. So this is a Splunk GUI. If you even use Splunk Cloud, it's going to look pretty similar from the front end perspective. So this is a landing page. So normally you can populate your dashboards that you create here. So when you log in, it populates. And these are the basic apps that come out of the box when you install Splunk Enterprise. I have a trial license, so I'm only allowed to ingest about 500 megs per day. But this is what the Splunk GUI looks like. The search and important app is the most common app you'll probably be using on your job. Click on it. This is the search box. This is where you perform all your SPL queries. Any questions? Let me see.
Hey, Kenneth,
Yes.
could you talk a bit about some of the values of having a SIM in any given organization? Like, is this a must-have, or do you think it's optional that not everyone needs a SIM?
I would say it's must-have in this climate. You don't have to use Splunk per se, because Splunk is insanely expensive. So having Splunk and having Splunk ES is like it's like having a Bentley, then putting gold-plated rims on that Bentley. It's very, very expensive. But I would suggest having some type of SIM in your environment. And then the more mature you get, you can add a SOAR, XOR, or a SOAR environment on top of it. So a lot of like next gen SIMs are starting to integrate their SIM and SOARs automatically in their offerings. So that is one option you can do, like Microsoft Sentinel, for example. But I would say it's pretty mandatory to have a SIM, even if it's Alien Vault or Security Onion. If you're like a nonprofit or something, or a small company, I would say it's mandatory at this point to have it, because you need to look at it from this perspective. If you don't know what's happening inside your environment, how can you protect against it? If you don't have any baseline for what's going on, how do you know what's bad if you know what's good inside your environment? All right. So being able to monitor and detect on everything that's going inside of it, and then put in some alerting mechanisms and put in some automation perspective from it, it's going to save you a lot of time and money, because humans get bored doing the same thing over and over again, right? So having the ability to automate the really mundane, boring tasks no one really wants to do is going to save you time, it's going to save you a lot of money. Because from the perspective I try to tell people is, let's say worst case scenario, there's like a ransomware attack, because you weren't able to detect or monitor on something. If you're a nonprofit, and let's say your revenue is only $10 million a year, and the attackers say, hey, you want $2 million a year, or we're gonna encrypt everything, and you don't pay, and they encrypt everything, and you're down for like months to get it back up, you're gonna go out of business, right? That's it. You're gonna have to fire your employees, you have to sell everything off. So it's worth spending, let's say it's called 100K to get a SIM environment, which it probably won't cost you that much if you're a small company, but it's worth paying that money upfront to protect yourself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So this is the search bar. This is where you perform all your search queries. And again, if you're gonna be an analyst or knowledge manager, this is a front end perspective. There's also the back end portions, but just for this demo, I was showing the front end portion. So out of the box, once Splunk gets started, Splunk automatically generates certain logs. So audit, internal, metrics. So those are generated from the Splunk server. So you don't have to do anything. Those are automatically generated. You can start playing around with those the minute you get Splunk out of the box. So remember, the index is basically just a repository. I'm specifying, hey, I want you to search the audit index. And for the time range picker, I'm gonna do over the last 4 hours. I'm gonna do it in smart mode. I'll click on the green search bar. Now if we turn all events from this index. And then you can have dozens of indexes on your Splunk server, right? So if you have, let's say, CloudTrail from AWS or Blue Coat from Azure, you would specify 2 different indexes so they can get ingested, right? Just best practice, those everything being organized, for example. Let's say I want to find what my users are doing for their actions for the last 4 hours. So I'll do stats count by user. So the stats command is a statistical command. Basically, I'm saying, give me the stats by the count for each individual user and give me the action for it. I'm gonna hit enter. And now I just brought back all the information for the past 4 hours. And it's about 3,000 events. And if you're curious as to how your search is running, you can click on the search job. So here, drop down, inspect job. And you can see that we returned 62 results by scanning about 3,000 events in about 0.17 seconds. Let's say this is cool, all right? This is cool now. Let's say I want I want to be organized more, so I can sort this too. Sort by the count in descending order. That's what the minus sign means. So now I have my top value, right? Which is Splunk system user, and the most common thing is to get the password, and that has happened about almost 1,000 times in the past 4 hours. If I want to do a larger time range, I can do that. I can do last 24 hours. So now that's about almost 6,000 events per 24-hour period with that. Let's say I like this search a lot. I want to create a visualization on it, right? So I'll click on visualization. And I don't like the way it looks too much. Let's say I have too many. So let's tweak this back down to 60 minutes. Right. And you would just keep on playing with it to get what you like. So let's say I want to save this. So I'll say save as new dashboard. Dashboard title, call it test dashboard. Encryption test for lab. Panel tile, let's call it test 1. And I can save this as a bar chart, or I can save it as a table that we just had. Click save the dashboards, classical dashboard, save the dashboard. Now I can view my dashboard. Now let's edit this, right? Make it look a little bit neater. Click edit. Again, if I want to change my visualization, I can change it after the fact, no problem. Let's format the visualization. And let's make a dark theme. Let's format the visualization. Doing a stack. Doing a stack, it looks a lot better that way. Series. I'm gonna show the min and max. So now the highest and lowest value. Title. Chevrolet. Looks pretty good now. So we can use the Trails layout to break it down by each individual user, which I like. Make it medium. Split by, I'll keep it like this. So we like this. Looks good. So we're gonna say save, refresh. Now it's back in dark mode. So it looks pretty cool. If not in dark mode, it doesn't count. It's a rule in security. So let's go back. So you want to go back to your dashboard, you can click on it, click skip, test dashboard, click on it, and you're back here. Again, you want to edit it. You can hit cancel. Set this as my home dashboard. So when I log back in, this gets displayed. I can change it to anyone that I want to. So let's go back. Let's do one more. Oh, there's questions in the chat. Let me see. Okay. Okay. Let's do NX equals internal. So these are internal metrics from Splunk. Let's do the last 4 hours. It's taking a while because we're bringing back a decent amount of events. And again, this is a test license on a small Linux AWS server. So what do I want to look up? Let me go to log level for yeah, let me do log level. Okay, let's do stats again. Stats count by log level for component. Component, enter. Right, again, let's sort it. Sort count, enter. Awesome. Perfect. Now I'm gonna save this again to the existing dashboard. Test dashboard panel title, test 2. Save the dashboard, view dashboard. All right. Let's edit this, make it look a little bit better. So format visualizations. Oh, yes. Row numbers, yes. So, yes. 2 by cell. Data override, heat map. None. Summary, yes. Yes, we do. You want percentages? Nah. You want summary though. All right. You can format each individual column. You can do color if you want to. Can I do it for this one? Let me see. I was down to do color this time. That sucks. Ah, fine. We'll just do heat map. Where is? There we go. Let's do heat map. This heat map is going to give you basically a heat map. What's highest? How's it going down? Basically. Again, you can change visualization if you want to, but we're going to keep it as a statistical table, basically. Does it look good to me? Let's do 5. There we go. Looks a lot better. So these are top 5 values. Give a title, heat map for log level internal metrics. Save. Check the Q&A. All right. Okay, this looks pretty good. So now we can go back, search. There's one more thing I want to show you. Let's see if I still have it. That's right, all time. And so you can upload test data sets as well. So you can go to settings add data. You can do one-time upload, second file, and then you would be able to upload whatever data that you want to test out. So you can basically mimic everything that I've done so far in this lab if you want to. But yeah, I just want to show you this little demo so you can see what a Splunk actually looks like in action if you haven't seen it before. So let me share my screen for this again. All right, let's go back. Where slide were we at? All right. Let's see if there's any questions. All right, from Alex. What is your opinion on the Splunk Action Broker versus the Palo Alto Broker? Do you think Splunk should control something that's achievable by the company? Or do you see it as vaporware as it relates to SIEM and SOAR? So I personally, I don't really use mission control that much for my role. I haven't really used it too much in my career, actually. It depends. I do know Palo Alto is a competitor of Splunk when it comes to their SOAR offerings. I mean, honestly, a lot of times it just depends on the infrastructure and the overall environment that they have. For example, a lot of people go with Azure, and then go with Sentinel because they already have Azure, and trying to get AWS or Google Chronicle or Google Cloud inside their system. It's a lot of money to get the whip and ship all of their stuff. So my personal opinion, I'm a Splunk person. That's what I like using the most. I like the way their interfaces are built. And I think Palo Alto has very crappy documentation, in my personal opinion. So I normally prefer to use Splunk in most of my security products, but that's just me. And then for Andre, will the dashboard change over time? I'm refreshing, get updated with the new data. Or is it unchanging? Always use the same data when it's created. So that depends. Because our lab environment, a lot of data is static, it won't update. It will just be constantly the same. So if you're doing like a one-time upload and that data is just static, it's not being constantly updated, you're not monitoring anything, then it won't change. It'll just have that one picture. So it'll be like a snapshot basically. Because I was doing internal data, which is constantly getting monitored, you can set it in the backend to be monitored for those dashboards and those saved searches. So that's something that you can do. So for logic and Alien Vault, I've never used logic my entire life before. I think I used like Alien Vault once. I believe they're free open source. So if you're getting started out, that is something you can test around with and play and see how you like. Because they are free and open source, what they can do is limited if you're trying to scale up to like a large enterprise environment. So that's why most Fortune 100, 250 companies don't use it, right? They'll use something like a paid version. So like Splunk, Elastic, Microsoft Sentinel, for example. But again, if you're like a small nonprofit and you have a small budget, then those are options that you may want to use to save money because you don't need something crazily insane with a lot of tools, bells and whistles that you're not really going to use. So we'll go to the next slide now. All right. So there are different use cases that you can use Splunk with. There's a lot of them actually. If you go towards their site, they have like I believe like a full list of them. But a couple that are pretty cool are, so build out a foundational solution that you want to use for business. There's UBA, user behavior analytics. There's log retention or data management. So the bottom one is originally why Splunk got started, was log retention and data management. As they've grown over the past decade and a half, they've expanded out to observability, DevOps, security operations, right? Finance business. So they've really expanded out their offerings. The UBA portion is super cool because it can go in hand with IAM, identity access management. So basically knowing when you're so knowing when your users are logging in, how they're logging in, why they're logging in, and where they're logging in. Because again, if you don't know what is normal inside your environment, how can you know what is abnormal? So getting that baseline is super important to know if Sally's logging in from Moscow, Russia, when she lives in Houston, Texas, and she's doing it at 2 a.m. in the morning. That seems very suspicious, right? Why is that happening? So if you're able to get that information and know that she's not supposed to be there or doing that, or it's not her, that's very beneficial for your firm. And there's also like Microsoft Teams, Slack plugins that you can use to integrate that data into your Splunk or any SIEM platform really to monitor that as well. So a lot of cool things you can do. So now we're going to go into the SOAR portion for the last bit. So what is SOAR? So SOAR stands for Security Orchestration Automation Response. So think of security, so security use cases, security data, orchestration, basically taking all your disparate tools that are siloed and basically being like a conductor and orchestra and organizing all of that, being able to use it from one central place. And then you have automation, which is one of the big reasons why people try to bring in a SOAR platform. Basically automating all the boring, all the mundane stuff that takes up your analyst times and that they'll make mistakes that they keep doing over and over again because we're human, right? You make a human do something over and over again, he's probably gonna make a mistake, right? Because he's gonna get bored. Then the response portion. Then the response portion. So that is going into automation, like responding towards alerts and incidents, right? So normally how it works is you'll have the SIEM platform on the bottom and the SOAR platform on top. And the SOAR platform will ingest those alerts from the SIEM platform or whatever XDR tool, for example, right? Maybe a Sentinel-1 or something. It can then respond towards those alerts when they rise towards the threshold of being an incident. And they can take care of it. Either it can be a workbook, playbook that's almost completely automated, or there can be spots where it stops and needs human intervention depending on the scenario. So SOAR platforms are normally used in more mature security environments. When I originally started back in 2019 in cybersecurity, SOAR wasn't really that popular. So a lot of big vendors didn't have like a fully fleshed out SOAR platform. So it's really started to pick up steam over the past 3 to 4 years. So it's pretty cool to see. Again, these are the core fundamentals of it. Security, making sure there's the corporate environment secure from any threats. You have orchestration, making sure all the tools and integrations are in sync together, which is if you ever work like a large security environment, you know that's a big issue that companies have. They'll have thousands of tools, and they don't know how they got them or why they're there or how to use any of them, right? So getting orchestration is very important. The automation part, no one likes doing phishing tasks, checking right phishing links all day, every day. That's what I did when I was an intern. It gets boring pretty quick. I mean, I enjoyed it because that was my first security experience, but if you do it for a couple of years, it'll drive you insane. Then you have the response portion. So we're fine towards alerts and incidents. So once an alert becomes an incident, once it passes that threshold, you can automate that, or you can have a human take a look at it from the SOAR platform. So specifically, for XSOAR, we're looking at the four main components of it. This is my license pretty similar with any single SOAR platform. The naming conventions may be a little bit different, and the components might be slightly different. But at core, these are what most SOAR platforms do. I just happen to use XSOAR. I do like it. So XSOAR is Palo Alto's SOAR platform. The four main components are incidents, integrations, which are basically apps, playbooks, and then automations, which are scripts. Those are the four main components to an incident. With XSOAR, you have like the incident management, I guess, the GUI environment. I don't know the best way to describe it, where you can like case manage it, where you can handle those incidents. Then you have the integrations, so you can integrate apps. So if you're trying to check an IP address to see if malicious, you can integrate like virus total app, something like that, or you can integrate Splunk, right? To get the logs, so things of that nature you can do with SOAR. You have playbooks, which is basically setting up the control flow, so the programming flow, the if else, things of that nature. To automate, which goes to the scripts. So developing the full scripts, you put in a playbook, and the playbook will run it whenever it gets triggered. So Sally logs has 10 failed logons within 30 seconds. Fire off, the playbook gets triggered, right? That's a trigger mechanism that gets fired off and it runs the processes that are inside of it. There may be a certain app that it may have to use to solve that issue, right? But that's just how that process normally works. And this is a diagram of how the XSOAR platform normally works. So you have let me see, annotate. So you normally have the alerting sources, so SIEM, analytics, XDR, cloud alerts, vulnerabilities, cameras, emailing, the usual. Then it gets fed into the SOAR platform, and this is where it does all its magic. So secure operation, incident management, which I was talking about a little bit earlier, the cloud security, vulnerability manager, the threat hunting that you can do. You can integrate those certain apps, and then you're able to enrich your data, and then you respond towards it properly. You can have a ticketing system, which is very important. Instead of having like 10, you can have one in one platform. Threat intelligence, again, like malware analysis are some of the things that you can do with this platform. And again, if you use Splunk Phantom, or you use Swimlane, or you use Simplify, they all do exactly the same thing. How they do it, it might be slightly different, but at core, it's gonna look pretty similar towards this in most cases and instances. So just keep that in mind. One thing I teach my students is to be technology agnostic and be very flexible. Your firm may use Splunk Phantom, or your firm may use Swimlane, or your firm may use XSOAR. It just depends. But if you understand the core concepts of how technology platforms work, you'll set yourself apart pretty quickly. Why is it not? Okay. And this is a lot of poll questions. So what is the most important aspect of a SOAR platform? And is Splunk a SIEM platform? Can you overview these platforms briefly? Sure. Yeah, okay. So for Phantom and Simplify, for example, Splunk Phantom is Splunk's SOAR platform. So all of the integrations that you can do with Splunk, you can to Splunk Enterprise or Splunk Enterprise Security, you can do with Splunk Phantom for the most part. That is their SOAR platform. Simplify just got bought out by Google Cloud. So that is a cloud SOAR environment. And Google also just developed or bought out technically Google Chronicle, which is their SIEM offering. So that's Google getting inside the space. So you have Google Chronicle, and then you have Simplify by Google. Mhm. Okay, very good answer, Alex. That's a very interesting perspective. Yeah, because we do have to keep changing applications and trying to manage your playbooks. If your environment is kind of large, that can be very tedious for your Python developers to do. Does anybody else have any thoughts on these two poll questions? Howard has a comment. What did you do to learn the Splunk search language? So for me, when I went to Publix, that's really when my growth expanded. Because I had to use this every day, all the time. So I was kind of forced to learn it when you do something for 9 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week. It became a lot easier to understand Splunk, overall process of it, how it fits inside the security environment, and using the language. That's really where I got my best hands-on experience to start my career out. So that's why I'm always thankful for Publix for everything that they've done for me in my career. So my best advice would be to practice it, do it every day, even if it's only an hour a day, get hands-on with it. Don't use autofill, actually write everything out. You'll gain that muscle memory as you use it. Understand the base searches, and base search components. So when you do start to build more complex SQL queries, it becomes easier and easier for you to understand. And last, are there any questions for me? That's all I had for you guys today.
All right. Well, doesn't look like any question in the chat. Let's see, useful gather information. Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's any question in the chat. So thank you, Kenneth. This was a great presentation on SIEM and SOAR. And to everyone else, I did mention about the CSMP's bootcamp. So if that's something that interests you, learning more about cybersecurity, be sure to check out our website, csmp.org. There you'll find more information. Also drop the link in the chat here for everyone. So CSMP, yep.
If y'all have
All
any
right.
more questions for me, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I'll do my best to talk to y'all.
That sounds good. Thank you again, Kenneth.
No problem.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.